I guess, like many of you, the last, well, what is it now? 10 months, isn't it? I guess, has been rather interesting. I've been pretty flat out with my many clients, and they've been pretty flat out too, which you wouldn't believe if you watch the news. You thought everyone would be watching Netflix and so on, but it's been pretty busy. Not all my clients are busy, but most of them are. I think what I've noticed is that different people have handled this better than others, and I'm sure you've noticed it with your family and friends and work colleagues, that some people were in a bit of a spin with this, and some people actually handled it quite well, despite the fact that broadly they have the same circumstances to manage. So I think what we're going to cover today is going to be relevant whether you're busy, not busy, you know, whether you've got real challenges in your life or otherwise. In fact, it's probably more relevant the more challenges you've got. And most of it you'll probably know, of course you will, but I hope that over the next, well, up until 11 o'clock, we can find 2 or 3 key things that you can take away, which will make your life over the next, who knows how long, few months, more bearable, more tolerable. And don't forget that, you know, some people put their happiness on hold until the vaccine comes, or until they have a holiday, or until something. But my argument today is that you should be happy as you go, whatever the circumstances are. And that's the kind of key point about my talk today, that you can be happy as you go along, whatever's happening in the world. And that's really important to get to. It's not easy to get to sometimes, but we'll talk about how you can actually get to that, hopefully. So have a pen and paper handy, the old-fashioned pen and paper. There'll be lots of tips and tricks as we go. Grab the tips and tricks as we go, get them down on your paper, spit out the bits you don't like. And if you can take 2 or 3 things away that will help you, then that's great. Now, I'm normally much more interactive than this, but we've only got, sort of 35 minutes of me before we go into Q&A at sort of 22, quarter 2, somewhere around there. So I'm not running breakout rooms. I have got about 5 polls that I'm going to run just to get some feedback from you as we go. And also so you can benchmark yourself against others as we go. If you have any questions, then put them in the chat area and maybe put a capital Q at the front so that we can kind of see them as questions as opposed to any general chit chat. And then we'll definitely have time at the end to cover those questions. And actually I'll stick around after 11 if people want me to answer any particular questions that people have. In the meantime, if you could put yourselves on mute, that'd be great. I see that you all pretty much are. You can have your video on or off, entirely up to you, but it's nice to have a video on, I think. And we'll kind of kick off. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to run a PowerPoint just because that's, just makes it easier to trot through it. So let me just set that up now, and hopefully all of you can see that. Let me or Lauren know if you can't. So what are we going to cover today? I'm just going to, and by the way, Tracy did say to me that she wanted to record today, but we'll only, because you're not interacting and the polls don't get recorded, it's only me and the PowerPoint that gets recorded. So don't worry about any kind of GDPR issues or anything like that. So so once we get to Q&A, the recording will be turned off. So you can be as open and confidential as you want to at that point. So what are we going to cover? We're going to talk about resilience. What is it and where can you get some? Really important. Things to avoid, because I think there are some things that one should keep away from at the moment. And there are things to move towards, I think, in terms of daily habits that actually help us get better, and some daily routines. Then we'll touch on the idea of flow, which you may have come across before, you may not. Staying in flow is where kind of ultimate happiness is, and checking ourselves on that every now and again is really important. We'll then touch on mindfulness. Mindfulness as in enjoying the present, essentially, and spending time in the present. Often people who spend too much time in the past, and they say, do you remember when we used to go to the pub, and do you remember when this, and do you remember when that? And the trouble with that is it ruins your present, spending too much time in the past. And also if you're hankering and craving after the future, wouldn't it be great when we can go on holiday, when we got a vaccine, when we can go out again? Again, that can destroy your enjoyment of the present by spending too much time in the future. So mindfulness is about focusing on the present and enjoying time in the present, whatever the circumstances, really important. Then we'll go into probably the most important bit, which is a little bit of kind of psychology. I'm not doing much today because there isn't time. We could do another session on that, which you know, might be worth doing. But we're just going to touch on it. And pretty much all the psychology books talk about the gap between stimulus and response. By that, I mean a stimulus might be, I don't know, it's raining, or it's cold, or we have COVID, or I have a flat tire, or my head hurts, or, you know, something comes to us, and then we have a gap, and then we have a response. Now, most animals, pretty much all animals, apart from humans, don't have a gap. They have an auto response. It's a fight, flight, or freeze response. Humans have the ability to put a gap in and to have a response, which is not defined necessarily by the stimulus. Okay, so we'll come back to that, but it's really, really important not to let the stimuli in your life effectively define you, in my opinion, because the stimuli at the moment aren't necessarily great, and it'd be very easy to become a victim of those and have a well-being situation which is defined by that, which may not help you right now. Okay, so we'll talk a bit about the gap as we get to that later. But first, let's do a little quick poll just to get you to check in and just see how you're actually doing at the moment. Oh, that's interesting. Let me just fire the poll up. Oh, that's really interesting. Let's try that. Yeah, okay. So hopefully you can see that. Just tick one of the things there. So what defines how you're feeling at the moment on a kind of day-by-day basis? Okay, that's most people, nearly there. So that's everyone. So I'm just going to end that, and I'm going to share that for you. Okay, interesting. So quite a spread, and one or two happy things and positive things, and one or two less positive things. Now, the first thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to point out to you, this may annoy you, but, you know, it's kind of my job to challenge you today, right? That's why you're here, I hope. So if you don't want to be challenged, you might not want to stay. But what I'm going to point out to you is that your response to my question there, to some extent, shows what your self-talk is. And for example, if you say, I'm tired, when someone asks you how you are, then how do you feel? If you say you're tired, well, of course you feel tired. So now what I'm saying is your self-talk, that is your self-talk, and your self-talk often will be self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you say you're anxious, then you'll probably feel anxious. If you say you're happy, you'll probably feel happy. So point number one, major point number one, I think, is listen to your self-talk. And if it's not going to serve you, although it might be true, I get that, I do understand that, but actually you can choose what you say to yourself. So notice your self-talk, and you can actually reprogram that, even though today isn't about reprogramming so much. But the first thing is to notice what you say. So that's the first thing that's probably annoyed you, is to say, well, you know, notice this is your self-talk, which may not be helping you. But yeah, quite a range. So that's fine. So I'm going to stop sharing that hopefully now. Come out from there. And let's get into some of the meat and drink of what we're going to be covering. So first of all, resilience. Resilience is broadly bouncing back from adversity. And there's quite a lot of adversity out there at the minute. And there are broadly three things which, or three factors or criteria that you can use to influence your level of resilience. Firstly, which we touched on, your kind of behaviors, thoughts, and beliefs. Your beliefs are kind of your self-talk. They're the things running around in your head as things kick off, and it's what you kind of feel, what you think, and what you say to yourself, hopefully quietly in your head. But those beliefs will become your thoughts. They will become your behaviors pretty much automatically. And of course, behaviors drive consequences. So that's why the self-fulfilling prophecy. So you've got to be very careful what you choose to believe, essentially, especially at the moment. So again, be aware of that. Secondly, how are your problem-solving skills? Because as a coach, you know, I tend to wake up most mornings thinking, I don't really care what comes up today with me or my clients. I can tackle any of it. I can tackle any of it. And that's quite a good way to think, because it makes you feel resilient straight away. So I'm going to run a quick poll on your problem solving in a minute and see how you all fare. And lastly, obviously, managing your strong feelings is relevant. You know, things like fear, anxiety, guilt, or even kind of envy. And our strong feelings can either suck us down, or they can lift us up, of course, in the opposite direction, because our strong feelings can be positive as well. So let's do another quick poll just on how your problem-solving skills are. Just bear with me while I launch the poll. Again, just answer one of the answers. There's only 4 to choose from, but how are your problem-solving skills? Just tick one, please. Couple more to go. Okay, all done. Let's share that. So pretty good, guys. Pretty good. Pretty good. Which is a good place to be. You know, that you can actually get on the front foot and start tackling these things. So it means we can actually spend time perhaps today on some of the other things, which is the thoughts and beliefs and behaviors and the managing the strong feelings. So that's pretty good. All right. So that's resilience, really. So the point about resilience really is this, that it's in the head. The world is what the world is. You can't really change that. But what you can change is how you deal with the world. And those people who are, you see them, who are resilient, don't have a different world, but they have a different way of processing the world. So that's what resilience is about. So it's really about the mental cognition and what we do in that gap, essentially. That's essentially what resilience is about. So let's touch on some things to avoid now, because I think some of these things aren't helping some people. So first of all, going to bed late. You know, I'm just doing a course with Yale University at the moment, one of the Ivy League universities, and you know, they say that sleep is one of the really key things to staying resilient and happy at the moment. And going to bed late maybe is not a good idea, especially if you've had too much alcohol in the evening, etc. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but you know, some of these things may be not helping, or even getting up late because you're behind the curve when you kind of start. Watching Netflix all day, you know, it's not going to help you. We'll come on to that later. And social media. Social media is interesting. I don't know if anyone's watched the Social Dilemma documentary. Yes, it is on Netflix, but really interesting actually about the FANGs, you know, the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, the FANGs of this world who are basically praying for our attention. Their job is to keep you online. That's what they're trying to do. Why? Because in the end, they're trying to sell you advertising. So we are being strongly manipulated to do that. And while we're online, of course, we can get very grumpy in social media. You know, you've either got people's wonderful show reels of how wonderful life is, which of course isn't true on average, or you've got them all moaning about life, which there's a lot of that at the moment, and either of those things is going to suck you down. So I think social media is fine, and we all use it, but just perhaps limit your time on there, because on balance, it may well reduce your mood by being on social media for too long. That's my experience. Likewise, negative people, you know, have a look around you, see who's in your life. You know, all the kind of naysayers and energy vampires, and you know, it's difficult if they're at home, I realize that, but careful who you spend time with, because if you think about it, people around you are either lifting you up or they're bringing you down. And so you might want an upgrade. I don't know, just have a choose of who. No, I mean, serious point. I mean, I use a coach, and if I need some energy and I need some uplifting, then I'll contact my coach. And that's what my coach will give me. It'll give me an energy fix and some positivity. I generally don't need it, but when I do, then that's where I go. So choose the people around you. Be careful, you know, be careful who you let into your space, because they can bring you down. And also watching the news. You know, my attitude now is I watch it for 30 seconds. I've got to be informed, and then I turn it off. Because if I sit and watch it for any length of time, it makes me really grumpy. Because all the things we know, they only really share bad news, and it just brings you down. There's a lot of bad news at the moment. So I'd recommend limiting your watching of the news. Only my opinion. You don't have to, you know, don't have to agree with me, but these are things that I'm finding. A lot of people that are doing all these things on this page generally are not having great well-being at the moment. So I don't know where you are on that. But there are some things you can do proactively to actually move towards. And here's some. Again, you probably know most of them, but we'll have a trot through, and you may get one or two things out of this which you find useful. So first of all, as we well know in the positive psychology movement, gratitude or counting one's blessings, which I do every day, is a really good thing for mental well-being. And I do a daily gratitude journal, and I write down 3 things every day that I'm grateful for. And it might just be, you know, my iPhone. It might be my I don't know, might be my car, it might be the fact I have glasses and I can use my binoculars to see things. It doesn't matter what it is, but just reflecting on what you're grateful for is very good for your well-being. And even things like busy. I've been busy, but busy for me is good, not bad. So I reframe busy into being a good thing, not a bad thing. It's a real privilege to be busy at the moment. I know that. I count my blessings on that. Daily rhythm and routines, and creating compartments. So in that picture, for example, you can see there's, you know, you can make space for exercise, you can make space for meditation and reading, and sleep, and all those things. Really, really important thing to do, as we know. Linked to which is breaks. I mean, I gave up lunch break probably 30 years ago, but now I have a lunch break. It may be 20 minutes, but I will go and sit and I will make food, and I will enjoy making food. I'll enjoy savoring that food and enjoying that food, and not eating while I'm working. And savoring, by the way, is another really important thing, along with gratitude, to well-being. Actually stopping and mindfully single tasking over something that you're enjoying is a really important thing to do. It's a kind of mindfulness technique, but and even things like cups of tea, you'll enjoy more if you mindfully drink the tea while not doing something else. So those breaks are really important. And you know, there's a lunch break. There's also maybe a 5-minute break every hour. So set your alarm. Just get up for 5 minutes. Sitting in a chair is not good for your mood, because you slouch if you're not careful. Bad for your posture, bad for, you know, your diaphragm's level. Your mood will often drop. Get up, change your state, walk around the house, you know, get your energy shifted. So those 5-minute breaks every hour are really important things to do. And exercise, you know, this is what I do. You don't have to do this, but exercise is the magic pill for happiness. It really is. I know we know this, but it's free and it's abundant. But people don't want to do it. Unfortunately, they want to take cocaine or whatever it is that they take for their fix. But exercise is better than cocaine, apparently, and it's free. And the things I do, I mean, the last 3 years, I've done my 10,000 steps average per day for the last 3 years. So I have to do an average of an hour and 10-minute walk every day, a 4-mile walk every day on average. And I won't, you know, how many steps have I done today? Really not many, I can tell you, because I've been sat at my desk. 400 steps. I'm going to have to be out and about later, but that drives me. It drives me to go and take some exercise. And I'm also doing the Couch to 5K, which, okay, it's low level running, gets you to 5K over 9 weeks. I'm at the end of week 8, and I'm now running 28 minutes non-stop, which is pretty cool. And I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying looking forward to planning it, doing it, getting the dopamine hit from doing it, or the endorphins or whatever they are. So what are you doing? You know, exercise is a really important one. Setting goals, you know, I have my goals set for this year, all done. Three SMART goals, measurable, time-bound goals, and I have next step actions for each, all on one page, all sat next to me, so that I'm driving my year and not letting it drive me. So do you need to do some goal setting? Again, we could run a session on that. I'm running one for a client next week, because it's a good time of year to do that. Just some simple frameworks really for doing that. Hobbies, you know, fishing. Now my fishing's kind of stopped. I was told that you can fish at the moment, but apparently because they specifically said you can, but there were some guys in Hayling Island down the beach that have been nicked for £200 fines apparently. So there's something weird there in that the police don't seem to know that you can fish. So I'm being a bit cautious about doing that. But I go beach fishing. Nothing will stop me doing that as long as it's safe and as long as I feel I can go. And reading, I read a book a week. I used to say I didn't have time, which is rubbish, of course. I read at least a book a week now. So what are your hobbies? You know, do you need a hobby? Do you need to find a hobby, something to occupy your time and have a new compartment? Booking trips, that's more tricky, of course. But why not book a week in your diary when you're going to do something, even if you don't specify what it is? The thing about booking trips, as we know, is there's a halo effect. So when we book a holiday or a trip 6 months down the road, for the next 6 months, every time we think about it, we feel good. So we actually get a lot of halo effect from a trip all the way up to actually the trip and then doing the trip itself. And the trouble is we haven't had any of that in the diary over the last 10 months. And so we haven't had that looking forward to kind of feeling. But why not put something in the diary, even if it's a day out walking, maybe post-lockdown, or a week where you're going to go on holiday or something, so that you've got something to look forward to, and just book them as soon as you can. Learning, my God, I've done so much learning over the last period. What a great time to invest in yourself when you're at home, when you're at a computer, to do online learning and improve your value to the world, which would be good for business, good for you, good for your income, good for everything. So think about doing some online programs or learning something. I'm even learning the guitar, the ukulele, and I've been doing some online courses on psychology, and this Yale University course, which is fantastic. The science of well-being. I recommend it to you. Talk to me about it if you want to know about it. It's fantastic. And lastly, most importantly, your daily habit of managing your self-talk. I've said it a few times already. I'll repeat it again. I don't apologize for that. Probably the most important thing, listening to and managing your self-talk. So let's do a quick poll. You won't be surprised. Let's see. So the question now is, of these things on here, which might you actually do something about proactively to improve it? Okay. Let's just lose that. Go to poll 3. Daily habits. And again, maybe tick up to 2 of these. So up to 2 of these things, which of these daily habits routines might you work on to improve over the next few weeks? Just tick maybe 2. Or 1 if you like, don't mind, 1 or 2. A couple more of you to go. Okay, let's just share that now. Okay, nice. Top of the class for the noticing, managing self-talk. You'll know why I said that. Really important. And counting blessings, really easy to do, but very, very powerful. Strangely easy. And then a bit of a spread amongst the others, a bit of learning, a bit of exercise, a bit of breaks, a bit of daily routine. Cool. Okay. Doesn't matter what, but pick something, pick something and get proactive and do something yourself to actually improve your current condition. It's worth doing, and you feel good that you're doing something proactive as well. Okay, let's talk about a thing called flow, which you may have come across. A guy called Mike Csikszentmihalyi, someone I found about probably 11 years ago now. Mike's written a book called Flow: The Psychology of Optimal Experience, and it's about happiness really, and it's about well-being, which today's about. It's about happiness, well-being. It's about feeling good and not feeling bad. And he's a psychologist. He studied under Carl Jung, and he spent a whole lifetime working out what makes people happy, really, and what makes people unhappy. And he basically says, in a nutshell, he'll forgive me for this, but broadly, happiness lies in the flow channel. And the flow channel is where your level of challenge. So if you can hopefully see my cursor here, here's the challenge here, low on the left, and high, low, high. Okay, that's the degree of challenge in your world. And on the bottom scale, you have your level of skill and confidence. So again, on the left, low, on the right, high. So low, high, and then low, high on challenge. So, for example, if you're up here, where your level of challenge in your life is higher than your level of skill or confidence, then you will feel stressed, you will feel out of your depth, you will feel perhaps overwhelmed, and it says there panic, anxiety, you get that kind of stuff in your world, obviously. Now, there are 2 options if you're there, obviously. One is to improve your level of skill, so move yourself to the right by either learning or training or getting a coach or something to actually cope with the level of challenge, or take away the level of challenge, or take away level of challenge. So if you have too much responsibility, maybe you need to take some of that away and actually reduce your height down to the flow channel here. So you can move either way if you're up here, or both. Okay. Now, what happens if you're down here? This is the interesting one for me. People think they're happy if they're sat doing nothing or watching telly. They are not. Csikszentmihalyi says, if you watch television, you'll be making yourself grumpy probably 93% of the time. Why? Because you're not challenging yourself. And intuitively, your body knows that you're not getting any fulfillment from that. So, sorry, ladies, but sat on a beach, you know, in the sun with a pina colada or whatever, doing nothing, it ain't going to make you happy. Now, you're going to disagree with me on that, I know, but generally speaking, you're making yourself grumpy. And it's better to actually get off that sunbed and actually read a challenging book or an interesting book, or go and do a bit of windsurfing, or go and do something which is challenging you, and you will be happier as a result. And so the science is really interesting on this. And there are areas sort of just above flow channel. So here he calls arousal. So that's where you're maybe at university or school, where you're learning something really challenging and new, but your skill isn't up to it yet. So that's quite a good place to be, because it means you work hard on your skill to get yourself back into flow. Or indeed, just below flow channel, he called control. So under control, your challenge is just a bit less than your level of skill. So you feel, properly in control of your day, and you're not feeling out of your depth at any time. So that's not a bad place to be either. So guess what? Last poll, I think it is. We're going to run a poll. Where are you at the moment on flow? Again, just tick one. And we've given you quite a few options here. So let's just see where you all sit. So I've just launched that. Just tick one option for you. Again, no one knows who's saying what, so you can just be honest. This is confidential. We don't know who's saying what. One more. Okay, that'll do. I'm gonna share that. It's near enough. Okay, pretty good. I expect that when I say what I say, which is it's not a good place to be at the top or down the bottom. So people probably wouldn't vote for that anyway. But not bad, guys. Most people in flow, well, a third of you in flow most of the time, the others sort of just above or just below. So that's really not bad. But something just to check every now and again, because of course it varies day by day and hour by hour potentially. So something to check, both daily and indeed for your kind of life generally, to make sure that you are generally in flow. So a nice little. And by the way, the book's worth reading. It's one of the best books I've read. Or just go on YouTube. Go find Mike Csikszentmihalyi. His name's there. You'll need to spell it properly. But he's run TED Talks and things like that. So he's a really interesting guy. So I think the main thing about this is being conscious where you are. So linked to which, of course, is mindfulness. And as I said earlier, this is about really being conscious of spending time in the present. And not hankering too much after the past, or regretting the past either. So either thinking positively or negatively too much about the past, or positively or negatively about the future. You could be looking forward to things in the future, or you could be really anxious about things in the future as well. And it's quite a Buddhist idea, but craving something in the future, for example, is what Buddhists try not to do, because if you don't have something yet, it makes you unhappy because you haven't got it. And by the way, when you get it, you're worried about losing it. So that's why Buddhist monks, for example, meditate a lot, because they are working very hard on spending time in the present and enjoying and being grateful for what they have right now, and trying not to let themselves drift into the past or into the future. So that's essentially what happiness is about. Mindfulness is about. You don't have to meditate, of course. You could meditate. I meditate, but it's fantastic for your mood. Even just a 5-minute meditation can just reset you for the day. And if you do that once or twice a day, just sort of an online guided meditation where someone's chatting away to you, and you're being really conscious of your body and your breathing, just resets your whole mindset for the day. So I encourage you maybe to do that. You don't have to do an hour or half an hour, you can, but you can do it. You can do it in 5 minutes. You can do it in 1 minute actually. So there are lots of techniques out there to help you, but you can even just do it, as I said earlier, by mindfully eating or mindfully drinking or mindfully just being present with something that you are doing at this moment and single tasking on it rather than trying to multitask. And of course, we can't multitask. No one can, man or woman. What we actually do in multitasking is we're picking something up, dropping it, picking something else up. So we are constantly hopping around, which is not very efficient for anything, really. But the world is trying to make us multitask. So stopping and mindfully single tasking on something has become a superpower, an absolute superpower. But you can do it. You are capable of doing it. You have the muscle to do it, but you just need to be conscious and create that compartment where you're actually doing it. And part of mindfulness is savoring. Savoring is fantastic for happiness. Savoring whatever, savoring the warmth, the tea, the view, anything as you're going along. So mindfulness is a really good one. So actually, sorry, the last one wasn't the last poll. This is the last poll. Last poll, just on how you are doing on mindfulness, really. Just tick one. So how are you doing in the quest to be mindful and enjoying the present moment and not sort of fretting or craving the future or regretting or craving the past? Okay, one more to go. Okay, let's just share that for you. Interesting mix. Yeah, I mean, a few actually at the bottom, which is really interesting. 31% of you, become quite accomplished at mindfully enjoying each moment. That's fantastic. That's really fantastic. And then 46% you are consciously trying to enjoy the present. That's really good. That's really good. And just a few of you sort of up the top, which now I've made you conscious of it, maybe that's something just to be wary of. That's all. I'm not saying don't spend time there, but just try not to spend too much time there because it probably won't help your mood and your well-being. So now you're conscious of it, I think you'll be more able to manage that. So pretty good, guys. Okay, let's just lose that. So that's mindfulness. Again, not too much depth today. We're just touching on it. And again, you can go and find out more about this, or we could run a session on it or whatever. But we're just kind of throwing a few things at you to kind of grab. But now I want to go into probably the most important section. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail because of time, but we'll kind of touch on it. And we're going to start with some of the kind of psychology. So locus of control is something I work with my clients on every single week. So locus is a Latin name. It means the place. So it derives words like location and so on. So it's where the place of control is, you perceive the place of control is in your life. And there are two types of people. There are people who have an external locus of control, like this guy in the picture. Now, when you ask people how they are, if they externalize the control, in other words, they say to you, oh, the pandemic, the economy, oh, the competition's killing me, customers drive me mad, I can't go out, blah, Brexit, Trump, government, if you hear that, if you hear the externalities kicking in, then that person possibly has an external locus of control. In other words, the control in their life they have handed to these externalities. Now, we all have these externalities, but in my view, I have an internal locus of control most of the time. we all drift into that occasionally, but so it's a state of mind, right? It doesn't mean these things aren't there. Let's just be really clear. These things are there, but I choose to have an internal locus of control, which means that I am choosing to be in control of getting the outcomes I want in my life, despite those externalities. So I free myself up and don't allow myself to be hamstrung in the same way that this guy is. So it's a state of mind. That's all it is, right? It's a choice of how you choose to think about where the control is. And the control actually is in the gap, don't forget. It's in the gap. And all the psychology books, by the way, talk about the gap between stimulus and response. They talk about locus of control in one way or another. So I've saved you a lot of reading there. And even if you're talking about emotional intelligence, it's what emotional intelligence is really. It's about feeling, let's say, anxious, but not behaving anxious. It's about tuning into particularly your emotions, but the emotions of others, and not necessarily behaving like those emotions feel, but changing your behavior. But you say that's all very well, Paul, but how the hell do I get some internal locus of control? How do I do that? I get that would help if I could do it, but how do I do it? Well, really easy, really easy. And you might have seen this before, but again, I'm not going to apologize for it because it's one of the coolest tools that I use, and it's probably the simplest tool that I use. So let me just talk it through. Very simple. Just take the two blue circles away for a minute, take them off, in your mind, and just imagine there's just that purple circle there, which is your circle of concern. Now, in your circle of concern are all the things that you are concerned about. So, it's raining, COVID, I haven't got any cheese left in the fridge, I'm cold, my head hurts, my car needs a service, I need to go to the dentist, etc. Right? Get all those things, all the things that are in your circle of concern. You can't ignore them. They are in your circle of concern. They matter to you. They're important to you. Now, some of those things, if you bring the two circles back, some of those things you have a degree of influence over and a degree of control over. So, for example, in your circle of concern might be, and I'll use a simple one, but it's raining, and in fact, it's going to. I'm getting married on Saturday, and I know it's going to rain. It's going to rain hard. Okay, let's say that's in your circle of concern. Question: can you influence the fact that it's raining? No, pretty much. Can you control whether you have a good wedding or not, despite the fact that it's raining? Well, actually, probably yes. You can go and buy a load of welly boots and throw away your high heels. You can get some umbrellas. You could even go indoors. You could hire a marquee, etc. So some people let the rain destroy their wedding. Other people say, no, there's a gap here. With making some good choices, I can still have a good wedding despite the fact that it's raining. And if you extrapolate that out to COVID, Brexit, Trump, all the other things you can actually get very unhappy about. And so the question is always, when you have something in your circle of concern, and here's the thing, right? So if you haven't listened to anything I said so far, here's the gold. The tool is to ask yourself, what can I do? What can I do? Okay. So when it comes to things like COVID or raining, what can I do to control having a good outcome? And actually, if you can't do anything, move on. There's nothing to see here. Stop fretting about it. Stop going on about it. And a lot of people spend a lot of time on social media and on the news whinging and moaning about a whole load of things they can do absolutely nothing about. Now, they can do that if they want to, but I can tell you now, not only is that unhelpful for people listening to it, but it's really unhelpful for their own personal well-being, because it's a self-sabotaging emotion. Anger and anxiety and all those things are self-sabotaging emotions. Even though you direct them at other things or people, they actually hurt you more than they hurt those other people. So they're self-sabotaging. So it's just not helping you. So if there's something you can't do anything about, move on. And there's all those cliches about control, the controllables and so on. But that's what locus of control and these circles is about. It's about saying, what can I do? I'm going to go and do that. But if it gets me, it gets me. That's the way it is. And then move on and just get on with your life. So I'm not going into the kind of cognitive reprocessing too much today, but this is one little area that you can do very simply to completely reframe anything that comes at you, any stimulus that jumps into your circle of concern. The question is, what can I do? Do that and then move on. Okay, nice and simple. So let's just quickly summarize the key points and then we'll go into Q&A. So in summary, whatever's happening in your life, choose to be on the front foot. Get on the front foot and be proactive. Don't roll over and become a victim. Resilience is in the mind, not in external events. It's not about external events. It's about how you handle those events. Avoid a few things like certain people, the news, social media to some extent, and so on. So watch that. Create some good daily habits, things like exercise, diet, breaks, gratitude lists, that kind of stuff. Check your flow, make sure you're in the right place on that graph. Try some mindfulness, so that you can enjoy now, even though now in your mind might not be good. Now is fine. Now is fine. You just need to have it fine in your mind, and then you'll be much better. Choose to have an internal locus of control. That will help you. It's a state of mind. That's all it is. It's a choice. Use the circle of influence and control. And the question is, what can I do? So you're using that gap well, and if necessary, start to flip your self-talk if it's not serving you. So that's the session. I've rambled on long enough. I'm going to, I mean, my email's there. If you need to email me and ask me about any of this, or you want to argue with me about any of this, please feel free. But as William Shakespeare said, there is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so.